discord in the Conservative Party has grown louder after the leading Tory Remainer, Anna Soubry, said that the government needed to stand up to 35 or so hard Brexiteers who should be slung out of the party by Theresa May. Her call comes after Downing Street confirmed on Sunday night that the UK would not be in the customs union or a customs union after Brexit. Here's what Anna Soubry had to say to Newsnight's Nick Watt.
Labour's front bench itself is ideological. My front bench probably isn't, but it's in hock to 35 hard ideological Brexiteers who are not Tories. They're not the Tory party that I joined 40 years ago. And it's about time Theresa stood up to them and slung them out. Because they've taken down Major, they took down Cameron, two great leaders, neither of whom stood up to them. Well, if it comes to it, I'm not going to stay in a party which is being taken over by the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson. They're not proper Conservatives. And if that means leaving the party, form some new alliance, God knows, I don't know, but we just simply cannot go on like this any longer. Something is going to have to give, because if it doesn't, not only will we get Jacob Rees-Mogg as our Prime Minister, we'll get a devastating hard Brexit, which will cause huge damage to our economy for generations to come, and I'm not prepared to sit by any longer and put up with this nonsense.
Anna Soubry there. Well, we're joined here by Conservative Brexiteer Peter Bone. Welcome back to the Daily Politics. First of all, though, Justine, after seeing that film and those comments from your colleague Anna Soubry, has she gone too far?
I don't think Anna really particularly wants to see people, as she put it, slung out of the party. I think what she was expressing, though, was a real frustration that was triggered by the Sunday papers and a suggestion on the front of the Sunday Times that somehow there was a bit of a cabal forming on the pretext of Brexit, but actually fundamentally forming to destabilise and undermine our Prime Minister Theresa May. And I think for a lot of us who feel like we are a party that needs to be focused on delivering for the British people, getting us through the period of Brexit, making sure we get all of the opportunities that that can bring us to be a successful country on the other side of it. I, for myself, want to see us become a country where we've got equality of opportunity. And I think that's what people want to see us focused on. And I think there's a real frustration that there may be some people within the parliamentary party who have other agendas that aren't focused on the British people.
Right. Do you share that frustration of Anna Soubry's with the coverage that you have just talked about of a Brexiteer trio, if you like, taking over the government of Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Michael Gove?
I do share that frustration. I think that everybody in our party needs to be focused on putting at the front of our minds navigating Britain through Brexit. We're the party in government, and actually we should be focused on them and not ourselves. And we need to work as a team of people in government to make sure we deliver for our country. And I think that's what the public expect to see. Right,
but you don't agree with Anna Soubry then when she calls for people like that to be slung out of the party?
Not really, because I think it's a broad church, and so for people like myself and Peter Bone here, you know, we're friends. I think there's room for everyone in our party. I think we need to respect the very different opinions people have got on Brexit. They're different opinions, because actually this is a hugely important issue for our country. It's not a surprise that there's a debate about how to do it effectively for the long term. But I do think that it's a debate that has to be tempered with some reasonableness on all sides concerned.
Right, but who is behind the stories, the briefing, the challenges to Theresa May on the Brexiteer side? You were in Cabinet with the likes of Boris Johnson and Michael Gove. Do you think they're behind it?
I have no idea, actually. I'm sure if you talk to the Sunday Times, they won't reveal where that story came from. What I do know is that actually, as a party, we need to be pulling together, and frankly, we need to be having any debates that we want to have offline. I don't think it's helpful to have them in public anyhow, and I think we just need to be focused on being a party in government that needs to deliver for this country.
But was it wise then for Downing Street to respond, Number 10, putting out a definitive statement ahead of this week's Brexit Cabinet Committee saying that we are categorically ruling out being in not just the customs union, but a customs union?
Well, I think from my perspective, if we're going to have a Brexit that works for the long term and is sustainable, I represent a very young constituency in London that heavily voted Remain. I think we've got to make sure it's pitched in a way that the broad general population can buy into.
Right, so was that a mistake then? Because that wasn't broad in the terms that you see it.
I think a lot of people voted to come out of the EU. I think they want to see us get on with that decision. I also feel that they recognise that it's complex and it's very hard to sum it up in terms of what we want is a hard Brexit or a soft Brexit. I do think that they want to see the government get into this second phase of negotiations. It was helpful talks that we had yesterday with Michel Barnier. I think they want to see us approach those pragmatically. I think when people see any hint of some kind of ideology behind it, where it's more about how we feel than how we think, then I think they start to get worried that we won't approach this with a clarity of thought that is about putting the country's interests first ahead of anything that relates to our party.
Has Downing Street restricted the government's options too much by that statement?
I hope not. I think that we have a variety of agreements with countries around the world on all sorts of things, whether it's on climate change, whether it's at the UN, whether it's indeed NATO. We should be a country that regularly collaborates with other countries and goes into partnerships when it's in our national interest. And I think that's precisely how we should approach this second phase of negotiations with the European Union. And we have to put our country's interests first. We have to be pragmatic, we have to be sensible, and we have to have an eye on the future in making sure that this is an outcome that really is sustainable for everyone in our country. We can't be a country that has two groups of people, those that are very happy with what's happened and those that are very unhappy.
Well,
we have to go somewhere together, and that needs to be somewhere that's sustainable post-Brexit.
Right, well, that's compromise. I mean, were you happy with that statement when it came out? Did you celebrate the fact that Number 10 said categorically we would be out of any sort of customs union?
Well, good morning. Good afternoon, even, I think. 416 days before we come out of this dreadful European Union superstate. I'm 100% behind the Prime Minister and the government in what they're doing. They're just getting on and negotiating and succeeding. And what was said was no different to the policy that's been. It was always. You could not be in the customs union and do separate free trade deals with other countries. So therefore, we were never going to be in the customs union.
Right, but you're one of the 35 Brexiteers.
I'm not.
Well, you may be in the group of Brexiteers that Anna Soubry was referring to, unless she's told you otherwise. Do you think you are a real Conservative?
First of all, I'm not part of any any group, and I don't know why these 35...
You've spoken to Anna Soubry. She said she wasn't referring to you.
Well, she said there was a group, and as far as I'm aware, there is no group, and certainly I'm not part of any group. I am a Conservative. Justin and me have been friends since we've been on the candidates' trail together, and there are differences of opinion, of course, over within the Conservative Party over Brexit. I'm sorry if that's breaking news, but there are some divisions.
I think we've noticed that.
And there are some in the Labour Party. But, of course, what happened was we delegated the decision whether we stayed in or came out to the British people. They decided we should come out. And both... I actually don't... I think the Conservative Party in the Commons is more united than ever, because whether you were a Leaver or Remainer, most people, most MPs have accepted you come round and support what the British people have decided. Right.
Are you celebrating in the way that Peter Byrne can't wait to leave this dreadful EU superstate?
So I think Peter's right, actually. I think there is a broad consensus around the Parliamentary Party about getting on with this, but doing it
but there's no consensus, is there? When you look
at what's happened... some of the soundings off we've heard actually are not representative of where the broad Parliamentary Party is at the moment. But my point is that actually, you know, for most people watching this, that's a complete sideshow. What they want to see is us focused on being a party in government and delivering, not just on Brexit, but on a much more important long-term domestic agenda as well.
But the reason they're sounding off and the reason it is open season is because, I put to you, that there is a lack of leadership at the top. If Theresa May took the advice of Anna Soubry and got a spine, as she put it, then would there be the same sort of civil war breaking out?
Well, you can't say civil war. I mean,
hang on, I'm putting this to Justine, and then I'll put to you.
Well, I tend to agree with. I agree with Peter. I mean, I think that every single Prime Minister will always have people in their parliamentary party who are happy to run to a journalist and say that they think that Prime Minister's doing a terrible job, that they're not the right person. It was the same for David Cameron. It was the same for John Major, and it's the same in the Labour Party as well. In a way, this is the nature of the beast for any Prime Minister. I think that we need to back up Theresa May as she gets on with this incredibly challenging job, and that's what people want to see.
What's your reaction to Anna Soubry's comments about people being slung out of the party? Do you think she's showing loyalty there?
Anna is entitled to say what she likes. I think she was having a fairly bad day. I mean, one of the problems in politics at the moment is there is too much personal abuse. Probably Justine, or certainly myself, we've all had death threats and all sorts of things. So for colleagues to attack other colleagues isn't helpful. But I would defend her right to say whatever she wants to on Brexit. But she has to accept the fact that the decision was made by the British people.
Right. Do you fear that she might leave the party if Theresa May doesn't get a grip of the situation as she wants?
I can't speak for Anna, but I don't think she will. I think she's a very passionate person, and I think that's what you see. I think that's a good thing. I'm absolutely sure she'll remain part of our Conservative Party. I certainly hope so. Right.
I mean, one of the things you said would make her leave the party is if the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg were to lead it sometime in the future. Could you be in a party led by Jacob Rees-Mogg?
One of the things I learned as a year as a minister was not to answer hypothetical questions. We have a Prime Minister, we have a leader. There is not a leadership contest.
But I thought being liberated from being a minister, you can answer questions like that. Could you imagine being in a party that was led by someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg?
That might be a bit of a stretch, admittedly, but I think, again, what matters to me probably in any of those circumstances is what my own community thinks and who they feel is right. But we have a Prime Minister.
Do you think Jacob Rees-Mogg could become Prime Minister?
Oh, well, I suppose he could, but I think we have an excellent Prime Minister. I actually take the view that she'll deliver a superb Brexit and she will go on and lead us into the next general election. And I would serve under whoever is leader of the Conservative Party. I've always been a Conservative and I'll stay a Conservative. And whether I particularly like a leader or not, that, as long as that leader has been selected properly, then I will support them.
And I think that goes for broadly the Parliamentary Party. I think it goes for many activists. I think, you know, we're all people who've campaigned and served under a number of leaders of our party over the years, and in practice that will remain the case going forward, I'm sure.
Peter Bone, thank you. Now, for more reporting analysis of Brexit, check out the BBC News.